Right now in South Korea, there is this bizarre, escalating national pastime referred to as gender conflict. But here is the punchline: it is not a conflict. A conflict requires two sides engaging with each other. This is a one-sided national-scale bullying campaign where young men feel they are being systematically exploited and they are starting to shout about it. If this were a history book, we would not call a siege a negotiation between the fort and the invaders. We would call it what it is: an active attempt to dismantle the other side while insisting the other side is the villain. Really, the most shocking thing is how deeply this has seeped into every corner of daily life. It is not just happening in political halls, it is happening on the subway, in coffee shops, and in the quiet desperation of thousands of apartments. The reality is that the foundation of the society is cracking under the weight of this mutual, cold-blooded suspicion.
Hold on a second, are you saying this is completely one-sided? That sounds a bit extreme, does it not?
It is not just extreme, it is the daily reality for millions. And the absurdity does not stop there. Why would anyone actually demand this? Why drive this level of antagonism? It boils down to a brutal, raw capitalist dynamic. In South Korea, social status, attention, and security have been hyper-commodified. When the economy is stagnant and the competition for limited resources, jobs, housing, safety is astronomical, people do not fight for simple fairness. They fight for a larger slice of a shrinking financial pie. This is not just about jobs, it is about the very definition of security in a landscape defined by scarcity. The term Hell Joseon perfectly encapsulates this despair, serving as a constant, looming reminder that the current generation is the first to fundamentally perceive their future as objectively bleaker than that of their parents. Within this vacuum of opportunity, social status is no longer earned through traditional merit, but is instead violently contested. Every interaction in the digital or physical realm is filtered through this lens of hypercompetition, where the slightest advantage for another is seen as an insurmountable loss for oneself. This is not just a simple disagreement over fairness, it is a desperate scramble for the few remaining scraps of economic and social dignity in a system that feels increasingly rigged against everyone, regardless of gender. And in this fight, gender has become the most effective tool to claim victimhood and demand a larger share of the resources, turning human interaction into a zero-sum game. The people who are pushing this hardest are not interested in creating a better society, they are interested in winning the race for a better life in a country where winning has become nearly impossible.
I have been working 2 jobs to save for our future, but I still feel like I am failing you.
Your effort does not matter if you cannot provide the lifestyle I see my friends enjoying on social media.
This conversation is playing out in millions of homes. But we need to dig deeper. What is the cultural context? Why does society react this way? Because the foundation of the conflict is rooted in a fundamental imbalance that the modern discourse completely ignores: mandatory military service. For young men in Korea, military duty is not an option, it is a forced, hazardous, and life-interrupting reality. Consider the structural realities that the discourse conveniently overlooks. The mandatory military service for men is not merely a temporary inconvenience. It is a profound 2-year hiatus during the most critical period for career development, networking, and skill acquisition. When these men return, they are not welcomed with transition support. They enter a job market already heavily weighted against them. Meanwhile, the societal expectation remains that they must instantly assume the role of the traditional provider, carrying the full weight of the household's economic security. This creates a cognitive dissonance that is nothing short of toxic. They are being simultaneously told that they hold all the structural power and that they are the primary architects of female oppression, while their personal reality is one of institutionalized disadvantage. It is this specific failure of recognition, the utter lack of social capital afforded to them for their sacrifice, that creates the deep, unbridgeable chasm of resentment. Yet, in the current system, there is zero meaningful compensation, respect, or acknowledgement for this lost time. Instead, the discourse often frames men as the privileged perpetrators of systemic oppression, completely ignoring the massive cost they bear simply by existing as men.
That sounds incredibly unfair. How can you demand fairness when one side is forced to sacrifice years of their life for the state?
Exactly. This creates a mental friction that fuels deep burning resentment. It is the kind of resentment that does not just go away, it festers. It becomes the lens through which every single interaction is viewed. So, what happened when the demands for fairness actually took center stage? The hypocrisy became undeniable. When the rhetoric of total fairness clashed with the reality of traditional expectations, the system broke. If men are held to modern standards of total fairness, they no longer feel obligated to fulfill traditional roles of providers or protectors. Truly, the most disturbing part is how quickly this evolved into a total, silent, and permanent divorce between the genders. People are not just arguing anymore, they are actively avoiding each other. And what fuels this? The digital environment itself acts as a massive accelerant. The platforms meant to connect us are now weaponized, utilizing algorithms that prioritize extreme, polarizing content because it generates the highest engagement. These echo chambers do not just inform users, they insulate them. They confirm existing biases and validate the feeling of being a victim, making the prospect of understanding the other nearly impossible. A man looking at a feed curated by rage-inducing algorithms only sees confirmation that he is being systematically attacked. A woman looking at her own filtered reality sees only the pervasive threat of safety and institutionalized inequality. The result is a chronic distrust society. It is not just that they refuse to see each other's point of view, it is that the very capacity for empathy has been effectively dismantled, replaced by a reflexive defensive cynicism that views any concession or understanding as a strategic failure.
But does that mean they just stop trying entirely? That seems like a dangerous place for a society to end up.
The cold logic of capitalism dictates that if the return on investment for marriage and dating is negative, you stop investing. And that is exactly what happened. Oh, the result is not a war, but a total, silent, and permanent divorce between the genders. It is a society where dating, marriage, and cooperation are viewed with profound suspicion. The backfire is that the demands for fairness destroyed the social contract entirely. The market has punished the naivety of these demands by making intimacy too expensive, too risky, and ultimately not worth the price. Here is the thing that people from the outside just cannot understand. This is not about equality. This is about survival. Everyone is looking at the other side and thinking they are the reason their own life is so hard.
I am done. I cannot deal with the constant suspicion and the never-ending demands.
Fine, you were never worth the investment anyway, and I have better things to do with my time than waste it on you.
So this is the end of the line? Just complete isolation and distrust?
For now, yes. The people of Korea are now living in a society where trust has evaporated. The future looks like a collection of isolated individuals rather than a cohesive unit. This is the tragic outcome of a society that failed to balance economic pressure with fair rules. The competition for resources became so intense that gender became the weapon of choice. Everyone is so focused on their own survival that they are willing to destroy the very possibility of companionship. It is a tragedy, really. You have a generation that is technically the most advanced in the history of the country, yet they are finding it impossible to do the most basic human thing, connect with each other. The most devastating manifestation of this shift is not found in the heated arguments on social media, but in the quiet, empty spaces left behind. The collapse of the social contract is most visible in the unprecedented historic low in birth rates, a statistic that is not merely an economic concern, but a profound sociological verdict. Family formation relies on a fundamental degree of faith, faith in one's partner, faith in the future, and faith in the society to provide a stable framework for raising children. When trust evaporates, that foundation is destroyed. The competition for survival has made the risk of partnership, whether financial, emotional, or social, seem like an unacceptable gamble. We are witnessing a demographic suicide, not because the people do not desire connection, but because the cost of vulnerability in this hyperpolarized, distrustful society has become unaffordable. The final chilling realization is that this is not just a temporary phase of national angst, it is the beginning of a long-term, perhaps permanent demographic and social contraction.
It really makes you wonder if there is any way back from this point.
That is the question on everyone's mind, but for now, silence is the loudest answer. We are watching the slow breakdown of a social structure in real time, and no one seems to have a way to turn it around. The anger is too deep, the competition is too fierce, and the rewards for cooperation just are not there anymore. So, we wait and watch as this silent divorce continues to reshape the landscape of the nation, one isolated person at a time. It is a harsh reality, but it is the one that is currently playing out in every corner of the country. We are not just seeing a disagreement, we are seeing the end of a chapter. Fuel the truth at dating in Korea. Support the structure. Stay safe in the lounge.